Hi everybody, it's Elise. In this series of videos, I talk about the court cards in the tarot and talk about why it's actually fine to get court cards in your tarot reading and you don't have to worry about it at all, and they're quite easy to interpret. We'll be talking about what the court cards are and what it means when you get an individual card, one of those in your tarot reading, and how to interpret them when they come with other court cards. So in this video, in this series, I'll be using these cards. These are, in fact, I'll show you the box. This is the box, and it's Maman Miyuki's Marseille style tarot deck, and I like it very much. As you can see, the court cards are very easy to read because they're just so clear, and I really like the colour harmony. I think the colour harmony is really great in them. Okay, so we're going to talk about the kings now, and I'm going to write kings up here, and then I'm going to show you the four kings. So we're going to start off with the King of Wands, and then the King of Swords, like this, and then next it comes the King of Coins, and finally we're going to look at the King of Cups. So I'm going to start off talking about the King of Wands, and the King of Wands is a very charismatic person. He is very strong. He's the kind of guy, when he walks into a room, everybody looks up and everybody hopes that he's going to sit next to them, or maybe hopes that he isn't going to sit next to them, because he's such a hugely charismatic and sexy guy. So you can see he's even got this very long thing here with a little spike at the end of it. So he's very knowing and very very kind of, yeah, we could say he's a hot individual, delightful to be with, but at the same time he does tend to have a lot of authority that he's not afraid to use. So he's the kind of guy that would not be afraid to use his authority. So if you see this guy in your tarot reading, most likely it's to do with a lover or very charismatic, sexually attractive person in your life, or it could be you if that's how you think of yourself. Anyway, next is the Swords, the King of Swords. And he's a very intelligent person, because swords are air cards, and air is defined by the mental faculties. So he's a guy who's not only extremely powerful, but he's also very, very intelligent, and he is not afraid to do the ruthless things that his position demands. So if you see this guy in your tarot reading, it probably means that there's somebody like a kind of headmaster or a boss or your father, or somebody who is maybe being very authoritative and quite cold, actually. That's another signature of his. This guy is the King of Discs, and he is usually, if you see him in your tarot reading, it means there's somebody in your life who has set up some very high boundaries. Usually it's a lot to do with, you know, don't come any closer. So it could be like physically, don't come any closer, or it can be like their space, you know, their personal space is really like you can't get any closer. And if you're thinking, well, actually that doesn't mean a whole lot to me, it's because you need to set your boundaries higher. All right. So this is a very interesting thing about this card. It's all about boundaries. And usually when we see this card in the tarot reading, it's because somebody is working with animals, or they're working with the land. They're like an estate agent or someone like that. So they'll be, you know, realtor in the US. So that's the kind of person we're looking at. And then finally, we come to the King of Cups. So the King of Cups, if you know the story of the Fisher King is a king who is wounded, and he can't assume his kingdom because he has this terrible wound, and he's waiting for somebody to come and release him. So when we see this card, it's all to do with rulership of your emotions and putting the responsibility for your past hurt onto somebody else. So if you have this card in your reading, it means that you have a past hurt and you are hoping that somebody's going to come along and rescue you from your past hurt. But actually, the tarot is saying that's really your call, and you've got to be the one that addresses that. So it could be you, or it could be somebody that is close to you who has that. But as we all know, because nowadays everybody's a Jungian, as we all know, the point is that whatever you experience in other people is usually what you are mirroring from yourself. So please think of that when you see the King of Cups. So what can we say about all of them? Well, we can see that they're all sitting down, right? So they all have their throne. The King of Discs has a chair with legs, and the others have like something a little bit more stable and steady. You know, maybe it's a plinth made of wood or something. And you can see that they all have their attribute in their right hand. And so you're looking at them and you're thinking, oh, that's left, but actually that's their right hand. So the right hand is all about how we take control and how, the masculine side. So it doesn't actually mean that this person is a man. You know, if you see one of these cards in your reading and you're thinking, yeah, I see that, but it's a woman, then that's fine. You know, the kings can symbolize women in your life, or the queens can symbolize men. It all depends on the characteristic of the card. So when we're reading tarot cards and we're reading court cards, please don't be bound by physical appearances. You know, this guy could be the King of Swords, but could actually be a very strong, powerful and ruthless woman close to you or in your midst. Another thing we're looking at when we're seeing these cards is that their eyes, if you can see, their eyes are all pointing that way. And I'll just quickly talk about the way that people's eyes, or the way that people have their bodies. And I'd like you to notice the way that the King of Discs, his body, you can see his hips are turned towards the left, but his face is turned towards the right. And it's the same with the King of Swords. His body is turned towards the left, but his face is turned towards the right. So this guy here, he's kind of semi-full-on, slightly going off towards the right. And this guy here is always also slightly turning this way and going that way. So what does that actually mean? Well, going towards the right is the masculine side. And going towards the right is also, we can say, it's the future. Oh. And going towards the left is the feminine side. Let's see if I can squish it on this word. Yeah. And it's also to do with the past. So when I say masculine and feminine, what I'm actually saying, this one is yang. And this one is yin. Can you see that down there? Yeah, you can see that, can't you? So, so what does that mean? So, for example, let's take this guy here. So his body is going towards the left, which means that, and his head is turned towards the right. So that means that he's thinking about the future. He's thinking about the future, but somehow his whole being is being pulled back into the past. So this is obviously somebody who has a problem with being in the present moment, right? So they're planning and planning for the future, but they can't somehow let go of the past, right? So their head, planning and mental faculties and da-da-da, and yet the rest of them is really, going backwards. So we talked a little bit about the kings, and I hope that that's helped you a lot to understand, helped you some rather, to understand something about the kings in the tarot and what they could possibly mean. And in the next video, we'll go on and talk about the queens and how they relate to you and the people around you. And then we'll look a little bit at the relationships between the kings. We'll look at the relationships between the kings and the queens and the knights. Okay, hope you can join me then. Bye-bye.